There is nothing so difficult or so dangerous as to undertake to change the order of things. Niccolo Machiavelli. Why is it that the kindest people often seem to suffer the deepest? Why do you give your loyalty, your time, your truth, your whole self, and still end up left behind? Why do those without conscience glide effortlessly through life while you're locked in a constant war within? No one ever told you the answer, because they never wanted you to know. The moment you wake up, you stop being easy to control. And make no mistake, this is not some abstract philosophical lecture. It's a warning. It's the kind of rough, bleeding truth you've been trained to ignore for far too long. If you're still holding on to the idea that being good guarantees justice, stop here. Because you're not losing due to some lack of goodness. You're losing because you haven't yet realized this is a game. And worse than that, you're the kind of player who doesn't even know the rules. Machiavelli never told you to be evil. He told you to stop being naive. He warned you that in this world, it's not the nicest who survive. It's the ones who know when to stay silent, when to be cold, when to disappear without warning, without apology. If you're still clinging to the fantasy of a fair and moral world, then brace yourself. What you're about to hear will dismantle everything you've ever believed about goodness, about morality, about your own nature. So ask yourself, are you truly ready to hear it? If not, walk away. If yes, then stop everything. Be quiet and listen closely. Because they never taught you how the world truly operates. They only trained you on how to behave, how to hope, how to stay small and obedient. You were raised with the idea that if you just work hard, stay loyal, keep your head down, and do the right thing, life will eventually repay you. But no one ever taught you how to survive betrayal. No one warned you that your kindness could one day become someone else's currency. No one prepared you for the silence that follows after you've given everything and received nothing in return. This is the kind of pain they don't put in school books. The pain of watching people you trusted vanish the moment you're no longer useful. The pain of realizing your goodness was never honored. It was used. And not because you were weak, but because you believed the game was fair. Machiavelli, he never believed in fairness, because fairness isn't a law of nature. It's a bedtime story told to keep the obedient asleep. You weren't betrayed because you were bad. You were betrayed because you expected loyalty in a world that actually rewards leverage. And here's the part that will cut the deepest. You gave people access to your time, your trust, your rawest truths. And they used it, not because they hated you, but because they didn't care. Picture this. You're standing alone in a dark room, holding the remnants of all that you gave, while the people who received it, they've already forgotten your name. You thought loyalty was something sacred. They saw it as something strategic. Machiavelli didn't write for the admired. He wrote for the forgotten, for the man who gave too much, for the woman who stayed too long, for the soul who ever whispered, "Why wasn't I enough?" You were always enough. But you were playing the wrong game. You followed the rules of morality in a world constructed entirely on strategy. No one ever told you the truth, that this world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards usefulness. It values those who bring leverage, who hold control, who master timing, not effort. Let's get brutally honest. If you're too kind and lack boundaries, they will drain you. If you're too loyal and have no leverage, they will use you. And if you're too forgiving without enforcing consequence, they will forget you. Because this world, it does not run on fairness. It runs on advantage. This is not an invitation to cruelty. This is a call to awareness. Because your innocence, if you don't learn how to arm it, will become your prison. Your softness, if it goes unguarded, will eventually become your grave. You were taught to avoid conflict, to be polite, to suppress your voice when something felt wrong. But tell me, where has that silence taken you? How many times have you swallowed your truth just to keep the peace? How many times did your spirit break behind closed doors while your lips stayed shut? You suffer, but you suffer in silence. Because you've been taught that makes you noble. It doesn't. Machiavelli saw what most people cannot bear to confront. That nobility without power is nothing but performance. That suffering without strategy is just another form of quiet submission, and that if you don't learn how to defend your soul, they will continue taking from you. Not because they are evil, but simply because they can. This is the agony of not knowing the rules. This is the brutal cost of believing the system sees you. It doesn't. It sees your output, your obedience, your silence, and when you finally break, it replaces you. If any part of this hits home, it's not because you're broken. It's because you're beginning to wake up. You're starting to understand that your suffering may not have been some cruel accident, but the natural result of being good in a system designed to reward something else entirely. And that insight changes everything. Because once you truly see the game, you can start playing it. Not like a pawn, but as something infinitely more dangerous. A player who observes, a player who waits. A player who learns to strike not out of revenge, but to restore balance. That is what Machiavelli offered you. Not cruelty for its own sake, not manipulation as a habit, but real power. Power that doesn't scream, power that doesn't beg, power that doesn't shatter when challenged. It simply stands unbothered, unshaken, unapologetically whole. This is your beginning. And it doesn't start with rage. It doesn't begin with blame. It begins with truth. No one taught you how to survive. So now you teach yourself. And before you go any further, ask this. If this pain was never personal, only systemic, what changes the moment you stop playing by their rules? The answer starts right now. They dressed it up, wrapped it in virtue, told you that kindness was a strength, that politeness was power, that if you remained generous, humble, and soft, life would eventually repay you. But here's the truth. Kindness without clarity, that's a trap. Kindness without boundaries, that's a weapon used against you. Kindness without awareness, that's not virtue, it's submission dressed up in morality. They told you to do what's right, but never said who defines what right even means. They told you to turn the other cheek, but never taught you how to protect yourself. They glorified your sacrifice, but never showed you who was profiting from it. Machiavelli. He saw through the entire game. He knew that society doesn't reward kindness. It rewards usefulness. It rewards leverage. It rewards those who understand the system and bend it quietly. And while you were busy helping everyone else, no one was helping you. While you kept saying yes to everything, they slowly forgot how to value your time. While you gave second chances with open hands, they took third, fourth, and even fifth without hesitation. Because the truth is, society doesn't truly respect kindness. It respects strategy. It respects the person who knows when to say no, when to walk away, when to give, and just as importantly, when to withhold. You were never taught that. You were trained to be agreeable, trained to avoid conflict, trained to be liked. But here's the reality. Being liked is not the same as being respected. And being respected is still not the same as being safe. You can be loved by everyone and still be used by all of them. Because people don't treat you based on what you deserve. They treat you based on what you allow. Let that truth sink in deep. Because the moment you tolerate disrespect, you give it permission to grow. If you're always available, you begin to disappear in their eyes. If you never set boundaries, they'll keep pushing until there's nothing left of you. But this doesn't mean you need to abandon kindness. It means you must redefine it. True kindness has a backbone. Real kindness knows when to say enough. It protects itself first, then offers from a place of abundance, not depletion. There is no virtue in becoming exhausted for others. There is no honor in letting yourself be used. There's only silence followed by regret. And while you're still overthinking whether you've been too harsh, they're already calculating how much further they can push you before you finally snap. You think that saying yes makes you a good person, but it doesn't. It makes you easy. Machiavelli would tell you yes, a wise man knows when to appear kind. But a wiser one knows precisely when that kindness must end. Because fake morality, it's a prison. It keeps you apologizing for things you never even did. It keeps you soft and silent in situations that demand steel and clarity. Stop asking yourself, what will they think of me? Start asking, why do I even need their approval? Kindness is not about approval seeking. It's strength under control. So let's make this the new rule. Be kind but unpredictable. Be generous but selective. Be forgiving but never forgetful. Be good but never easy. Because, in a world that trains you to sacrifice yourself, the most powerful act of all is to stop bleeding for those who wouldn't offer you a drop in return. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. And self-respect, that's where real power begins. Now ask yourself something real. What if your kindness was never the problem? What if the problem was that it went unguarded? Let's fix that. You've been taught that showing emotion is a sign of authenticity, that to cry is strength, that being vulnerable is bravery. But let's ask something painfully honest. Has your vulnerability ever protected you in a negotiation? Has your honesty ever stopped someone from betraying you? Has your emotional openness ever softened the ruthless? Exactly. Machiavelli never said emotions were bad. He said they were dangerous. Not because you feel them, but because others can see them. And once they do, they know precisely where to strike. In the game of power, visibility becomes liability. Your anger, they'll provoke it. Your love, they'll exploit it. Your guilt, they'll turn it into a weapon. The truth is direct and sharp. He who controls his emotions controls the room. He who loses control loses leverage. Do not twist this. You are allowed to feel everything, but you are not allowed to reveal everything. Control is not suppression. It is direction. It's the ability to hold the fire and choose where it burns. And even more important, who it touches. The world teaches you to react, to post, to rage, to explain yourself. But reaction is a gift handed straight to your enemies. Silence. Silence is a sword they cannot block. They expect you to fall apart. They expect you to defend yourself, to justify, to apologize. So what happens when you don't? What happens when you just observe, calm, focused, unmoved? When you unfold the situation like a strategist, not a victim, not a pleaser, but a surgeon of perception. That's when the fear shifts. It's no longer you fearing them. It's them who begin to question you. Because emotion makes you predictable. But control makes you terrifying. They don't know how much you've seen. They don't know what you're planning. They don't know where your line is. And that mystery, that unknown, is power. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming untouchable. Because emotional discipline is not the absence of humanity. It is the presence of clarity. And clarity, it's rare. It's uncomfortable. It's threatening. Especially to those who manipulate through confusion. They'll call you distant, aloof, arrogant. They'll try to pull a reaction from you. They'll interpret your silence as weakness. Let them. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be effective. And effectiveness demands edge. Look at history. The leaders who built empires didn't speak with trembling voices. They didn't over-explain their every move. They mastered the art of presence. They walked into rooms and shifted gravity not with volume, but with restraint. Because emotion shouts, but power whispers, and that whisper pierces deeper than any scream ever could. So the next time pain tightens around you, don't announce it. Harness it. Don't collapse. Convert. And never forget. The one who keeps their calm in chaos is the one who cannot be broken. That's the difference between those who merely survive the game and those who master it. If you've ever lost power to your own emotion, it's time to take it back. Quietly, deliberately, completely. You were taught that speaking up was power, that self-expression was strength, that silence was weakness. But Machiavelli knew something different. In the world of power, silence is not surrender. It's a signal, a calculation. It's fear at its most silent and effective. Because silence, it makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to guess. And guessing, that's where power truly begins. The loudest person in the room is rarely the one in control. They speak to be noticed. They react to be respected. They explain to be accepted. But the truly dangerous man, he says nothing. He lets the room shape itself around his presence. He makes people uncertain. He lets others fill in the blanks with fear, with awe, with caution. That is power. You think silence is passive? It's not. It is the most active form of dominance. It demands attention without asking for it. It shifts power dynamics without making a sound. Let's be clear, you do not need to explain your boundaries. You do not need to justify your standards. And you absolutely do not need to voice every emotion to validate your experience. Sometimes power is preserved not in what you express, but in what you hold back, in what you allow others to wonder. Because once they know what angers you, they'll use it. Once they know what you fear, they'll control it. Once they know your limits, they'll push them. But if they know nothing, they tread carefully. They speak softer. They never assume you are weak. This is the genius of controlled silence. When you don't explain, they wonder. When you don't react, they project. When you don't chase, they question their own value. And that is where manipulation crumbles. Because emotional manipulators, they survive on predictable reactions. But when you give them nothing, no anger, no validation, no engagement, they become lost. And in that stillness, your silence becomes armor. Your silence becomes signal. Your silence becomes warning. The world doesn't expect you to stay calm. It expects you to shatter, to overexpress, to spill everything in words just to be heard. But the king never explains his strategy. The general never discloses where the next strike will fall. And you're not just surviving anymore. You're building your own kingdom. So take this in. When they disrespect, you don't argue, withdraw. When they underestimate, you don't prove them wrong. Just observe. When they expect your reaction, give them silence instead. Because reaction, more often than not, is weakness dressed up as passion. But restraint is unmistakable power. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to prove to be seen. You don't need to talk to be felt. All you need is to remain unshakable, unmoved, and that kind of presence. It begins in silence, the kind of silence that doesn't echo, it pierces, the kind that makes them question everything about you. What you know, what you want, what you're capable of doing. That is the true language of the powerful. Feel it, master it. Because those who do, they don't get crushed, they do the crushing. And if the noise of the world has buried your presence, then now is the time. It's time to become the kind of quiet they can't ignore. Machiavelli said it without hesitation. It's not enough to be powerful. You must appear powerful. Because in this world, perception is everything. And whoever controls perception controls the game. People don't follow truth. They follow certainty. They follow confidence. They follow the illusion that anyone knows exactly what they're doing. And the master of power, he doesn't need to bend facts. He only needs to shape how those facts are seen. That's why incompetent men rise. Because they understand image. That's why honest workers are overlooked. Because they don't know how to perform their value. That's why lies told with boldness often win over timid truths. Machiavelli saw something society tries to hide, that people don't believe in what's real, they believe in what looks real. So if you don't shape how they perceive you, they will, and their version will always work against you. You think honesty is enough. You think your work will speak for itself. It won't. Not unless it's filtered through the right frame. Because influence isn't about being the best, it's about being believed. And belief is performance. Let's be clear. Controlling perception is not lying, it's curation, it's strategic truth. It's the understanding that how something feels is more powerful than how it actually is. Say less, but say it better. Show less, but show it stronger. Don't just aim to be competent. Be compelling. That means you don't overshare. You don't reveal your weaknesses before they transform into strengths. You don't beg to be understood. Instead, you craft a narrative so tight, so precise, that others want to believe it. Because it brings them clarity. That's how leaders are made. Not just from raw talent, but from a sculpted image. You must learn to build silence around your persona. Wrap it in mystery, in respect, in uncertainty. Let them think you know more than you show. Let them wonder what you're planning. Let them fill in the gaps with fear, with awe, with admiration. Because when you control how others feel in your presence, you also control how they behave in your absence. Think of perception as armor. When it's constructed with intention, people hesitate before testing you. Not because they know what you'll do, but because they don't. That's fear by design. That's respect without negotiation. You want to stop being dismissed, then control your entrance. Control your tone. Control your image. Let your presence say more than your words ever could. Here's what you must remember. People don't treat you based on who you are. They treat you based on how they perceive you. And you have the power to craft that perception. So do it deliberately, strategically, without shame. Because this isn't about ego-driven manipulation. It's about survival. In a world that seldom rewards the honest, but almost always bows to the believable. You don't have to deceive. You only need to direct. Control the spotlight. Control the silence. Control the narrative. Because if you don't, someone else will. And if they control how others see you, they will shape how the world treats you. You were told to be loyal, to stand by your people, to never walk away. But loyalty is not what you think it is. Machiavelli didn't trust it, because he understood something brutal. Loyalty is not rooted in love, it's rooted in benefit. People remain loyal to what serves them, not to what saved them, not to what supported them, not to what bled for them. You can give someone everything, and they'll still walk away. Not because your loyalty wasn't strong enough, but because your loyalty no longer mattered. And in the real world, irrelevance is death. We've romanticized loyalty, turned it into something sacred. But in the realm of power, it's just a transaction, a temporary contract. And like any contract, it can be broken the moment it no longer pays. Just think about it. The employee who gave their life to the company laid off by a single email. The friend you protected, gone the moment your name was on the line. The leader who praised your loyalty replaced you the moment someone cheaper came along. Loyalty without leverage is servitude. It's not honored. It's expected. And once expected, it's no longer appreciated. It becomes background noise, a weakness, a given. They'll say you've changed when you stop being loyal. But what they really mean is, you stopped being predictable. You stopped being theirs. Machiavelli would tell you, don't offer loyalty. Offer value. Make people want to keep you. Not because of sentiment, but out of necessity. Because here's the unfiltered truth. People don't betray you for no reason. They betray you when the reason to stay becomes weaker than the reason to leave. So give them a reason to stay, or give them distance, and never confuse proximity with allegiance. Just because they've stood beside you doesn't mean they'll stand behind you. Just because they've laughed with you doesn't mean they'll fight for you. Loyalty isn't love, it's economics. That doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become clear. You begin to see that real alliances aren't forged by shared memories. They're built on aligned interests. You stop begging for loyalty, and you begin building influence. Because when you have power, real strategic quiet power, loyalty becomes a side effect, not a requirement. They stay, not because you asked them to, but because leaving you would cost too much. That's how you create loyalty. Not through sacrifice, but through significance. If you give too much for free, they forget the value. If you offer unconditional loyalty, they'll test how far it stretches. So become the kind of person they can't afford to lose, not the one they guilt, but the one they fear to betray. And if they do betray you, you don't collapse. You don't chase. You vanish. Let silence carry the consequence. Because the moment you stop needing their loyalty is the moment you start commanding it. And that's when they finally realize something crucial. They were never truly loyal to you. They were loyal to what you gave too freely, what you never made them earn. You've witnessed what happens to the obedient. You felt the sting of betrayal. You've sat in the silence that comes after sacrifice. You've tasted the emptiness that follows fairness denied. And now you arrive at a choice. Repeat the same painful cycle, or rewrite the rules entirely. If you want to stop being crushed, you must stop living like someone waiting to be rescued, because no one is coming. Not the system, not the boss, not the one who swore they'd never leave. And that realization, that's not tragedy, that's freedom. Machiavelli never claimed life would be fair. He only said that power is not given to those who beg. It is earned by those who build. So build. Build a mind no one can manipulate. Build a presence that cannot be ignored. Construct boundaries so clear they speak for you before you even open your mouth. This isn't about revenge. This is about rebuilding. Reforging your identity into something unbreakable. Start by studying the rules, not so you can obey them, but so you can understand exactly how to bend them. Learn when to make yourself invisible, when to say less, when to walk away. Not as a retreat, but as a declaration of quiet dominance, because strength doesn't always scream. Sometimes strength is stillness, sometimes it's detachment. It's being so rooted, so grounded, that chaos can't even touch you. The world expects you to react, to panic, to beg for their approval, to chase their crumbs for validation. So don't fulfill that expectation. Withdraw your energy from people and systems that don't deserve it. Starve the engines that run on your compliance, and while they scramble for attention, you'll be busy building leverage. Learn skills that can't be ignored. Create value that doesn't have to beg. Develop a presence that speaks long before you utter a word. You don't need to roar. You need to rise quietly, strategically, like a shadow no one can stop. This is not arrogance. This is authorship. The moment you finally understand that your life was never meant to be lived by someone else's design. So start designing your own. Set your standards. Enforce your space. Refuse to explain your growth to anyone. The right ones will evolve with you. The wrong ones will fall away. Let them. Machiavelli would remind you, the lion survives with brute strength. The fox survives with cunning. But the one who blends both becomes untouchable. You must become both, not by discarding your morals, but by protecting them with fire. Because good intentions left unguarded are just open invitations to be exploited. So protect them. Be beckoning but calculated. Be generous but always guarded. Be open but never exposed. Your softness is not the flaw. The real issue is the absence of strategy. Fix that, because in this world, goodness without strength becomes silence, and silence without presence becomes death. But presence, when it's backed by clarity, that is power. The kind of power that doesn't beg for attention, the kind that demands nothing, yet takes everything it chooses. And once you taste that power, there's no going back. So when they look at you and wonder, how did you change? Let them wonder. Because you didn't just survive, you rewrote the entire script. This was never a motivational speech. It was a wake-up call. Because no one ever warned you about the cost of staying blind. No one told you that in a world governed by perception, loyalty, and silence, the kind-hearted often become prey. You thought being good would be enough, that doing the right thing would protect you, that your pain meant something, that your sacrifices would eventually circle back with reward. But now you know, they don't. Not unless you change, not unless you stop waiting for justice and start creating your own terms. This isn't about turning ruthless. It's about taking responsibility for your power. It's about stepping fully into the space you've always been told to shrink into. It's about realizing that the world never hated your goodness. It just loved your compliance. Machiavelli didn't write for kings. He wrote for survivors. For the ones who finally got tired of being used. For the souls done with being stepped on, dismissed, and silenced. He didn't teach you how to destroy. He taught you how to endure with intention. To rise not blindly, but with a strategy. To speak only once silence has done its work. You don't need to become heartless. But you do need to become clear, because clarity is the antidote to manipulation. And presence is what ends exploitation. So ask yourself, who gains when you stay quiet? Who benefits when you stay small? And what would your life look like if you stopped waiting for permission to take up space? This isn't the end. This is page 1. The first page of a new script. Written by you, played by you, defined by no one. No more hoping to be chosen. No more bleeding for applause. No more confusing obedience with virtue. You've seen the lie. Now you choose truth. Not to be feared, but to be free. So now tell me, are you ready to become untouchable? Then start here. One thought at a time, one boundary at a time, one quiet, deliberate move at a time. The world won't save you. But you can write the story where you no longer need saving. And that is your first taste of real power.
Thank you for watching. Walk your path with quiet strength.